Continuing with the cross-examination of Dr. Johnson. So our plans for today is to complete Dr. Johnson's evidence. Then, Mr. Bax, are we moving on to Mr. Rattray, Mr. Crombie, and then yourself in that order?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Is it realistic to think that Ms. Cannon might also give evidence today?
Yes.
Okay. We can see how things go. It seems to me also, when we're thinking of House of Urard, that a lot of the issues that were contained in their hearing statement have already been covered during the inquiry session. So I think the House of Urard hearing session will be limited to commercial impacts only. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Campbell. No, I don't think we'll be ready for her by then, that's for sure. Yeah. Okay, perfect. In a worst-case scenario, would it be realistic to take Ms. Cannon's inquiry evidence together with the hearing session tomorrow? And I know that one of your colleagues was leading on the hearing sessions. Would that mean we can or can't do that tomorrow?
The difficulty with tomorrow is Dr. Blewett will not be able to attend tomorrow. Now, if the inquiry or Ms. Cannon would be put to inconvenience through not sitting tomorrow, then Transport Scotland would be content to press on with somebody standing in for Dr. Blewett.
Okay.
We're content that the promoter would not suffer prejudice, so it's more of a preference.
Yes. Okay, I appreciate that. So we can see how things progress today and take stock once we've got through the objectors group witnesses. Okay, you're continuing with your cross-examination, Mr. Mill.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Dr. Johnson. Now, because we don't have a CV or report from you, Dr. Johnston, and also because the detail of your view regarding impact on the battlefield was only presented for the first time yesterday, not being foreshadowed in your precognition, I'm not entirely clear as to the approach that you took towards your assessment of impact, and I'd like to come on to that. But before doing so, can you please let me know what experience you have in terms of assessing impact on cultural heritage assets in terms of the environmental impact assessment regulations?
Well, I think I've made it clear. I mean, firstly, of course, my concerns about the issues that I've been discussing were expressed in my objections during the process. So that in that sense, they wouldn't have been a surprise. My experience, as I've outlined, is as an historian and as a battlefield specialist in terms of the interpretation of battlefields.
And in terms of my question about experience in terms of assessing impact, in terms of the environmental impact assessment regulations, do I take it from your answer then that that's not something that you do have experience in?
That is not my professional remit, no.
That's a no. Given that you have expressed a view to the inquiry on impact on the battlefield through your interpretation, can you talk me through the process that you went through in order to come to your conclusion regarding impact on the battlefield?
I've been following the processes as best I can during the development of the plans as they've been presented publicly. I've been interpreting the archaeological reports, and I have had discussions with others as well. And my views, as they've been expressed, are based on my sense of the battlefield, its spaces, its assets, and how I view them to be impacted.
Now, again, we don't have a report to see what you took into account. Perhaps we would be assisted by returning to CD 423, the 2016 Managing Change in the Historic Environment, Historic Battlefields. If you could have that before you, please. Now, I understand, but shouldn't assume and be careful of misunderstanding a previous answer, that you are familiar with this document.
Yes.
In undertaking your assessment, did you follow the staged process as set out by Historic Environment Scotland?
I think to be clear, I have not produced an independent reported assessment in the sense that you're referring to. I'm assessing a view on those that have been created by the promoter.
Stage 1 is identify the baseline, and that we find on page 13 of Managing Change. The second paragraph under Stage 1, identify the baseline, I'll read quickly. The starting point for information on the baseline of a battlefield is the record in the battlefield inventory. The assessor should fully understand the record, including the reasons for the battlefield's inclusion in the inventory. This should cover details of buried and upstanding physical remains and the landscape context of the battle. We see under character and context on the following page that the assessment is to focus on identifying important factors about the battlefield, previous development, topography, land cover, boundaries, known or potential physical remains, and we read on to see other heritage assets and development ought to be taken into account. Now, we heard from Mr. Dempsey about the approach that he took in terms of Stage 1 of Managing Change to identifying the baseline. Do you disagree with the baseline as identified by Mr. Dempsey and as set out in detail in the promoter's environmental statement and Mr. Dempsey's evidence?
My concerns were not that work had not been done or the battlefield had not been taken into consideration, but the relative weightings that those assessments were given. I was concerned to see, for example, that Historic Environment Scotland had raised concerns over the application of the Managing Change guidelines during the process at some stages as well. And so I think that is my concern, that the full information as we now have it over particularly the archaeological assessment of the battlefield was not available until relatively late in the process, and from my own interpretation of those processes, it seemed to me that a complete understanding, so far as any such thing is possible, was not achieved until after options decisions had been made.
Now, we heard Mr. Dempsey's evidence that he was satisfied with the information which was available to inform the route selection process. What is it that you say was missing at that stage?
I think the fact that the up-to-date the final stages of the archaeological information were not available until 2018, following investigations in 2015, would suggest that the full archaeological understanding in terms of the battlefield munitions distributions, for example, was not available until that stage.
Now, Mr. Dempsey explained that there was a sufficiency of information to enable a route selection to be made at the stage that decision was taken. Are you familiar with the DMRB process?
Only in a relatively layman's sense.
Again, is that a no?
It's not part of my professional remit to understand those processes in detail.
the information which Mr Dempsey took into account to identify the baseline is set out at 4.4.27 of his recognition. I'll move on. Stage 2, as identified in Managing Change 2016, assess the impact. Again, to save time, I'll read short. There are many separate factors, this is page 15, to consider when assessing impacts on the battlefield. Each battlefield has its own key landscape characteristics, specific physical qualities, and archaeological potential. So we see again these terms, key landscape characteristics and what become special qualities. It's also important to identify less tangible values. Next paragraph, all of these values should be balanced in relation to the whole of the battlefield when assessing the impact of development. To be in line with national planning policy, any adverse impacts on inventory battlefields should be minimised. Adverse impacts can affect any of the values of the battlefield. Different types of impact should be identified and assessed, were then directed to the concepts of direct, contextual, cumulative impact. Now again, we don't have a report from you to show the process that you went through by way of assessing impact. Can you tell us how you did that in terms of the direction from Historic Environment Scotland to look at special qualities and key landscape characteristics?
Again, I would emphasise that it hasn't been my role as a voluntary objector to the scheme to have a requirement to produce a formal report. The interpretation that I've taken of the evident cumulative damage that is to be done to the battlefield by the proposal is based on my analysis of where the assets are, my perceived significance of some of those assets, and my concerns over impacts upon them.
What's particular special qualities or key landscape characteristics are you concerned about?
Well, I think we covered this in some detail yesterday, in the sense that in my assessment of the battlefield, I give some weighting to the areas directly in front of the position of the Williamite lines, in the areas where the two armies are likely to have come together. And I think it is self-evident from the archaeological information that we have available that those areas and the areas of cultural association, particularly around Urrod and Tumclavers, are areas, as I say, I think it's self-evident that the areas impacted by the scheme are areas over which munitions were fired, Highlanders charged, and the battle proper was engaged.
I have to say I'm not really finding anything self-evident in this. Can you answer the question, please, and direct me to the special qualities and key landscape characteristics which are impacted upon?
There's impact upon the topography in terms of the terracing. This has, I acknowledge, been discussed in detail, and I believe Mr. Rattray is intending to discuss those specifics in his presentation as well. The impacts on some of the archaeological remains, for example, immediately north of Urrod Walled Garden in Field F5. And in terms of your concern about the self-evident nature of this, the fact that there are munition scatters on either side of the road is, of course, indicative that the scheme is cutting through the areas over which the battle was fought.
I think I'll need to try a bit harder in terms of the key landscape characteristics and special qualities. Before we turn to the key landscape characteristics and go through them one by one, continuing the process that we were undertaking yesterday in terms of where we're directed to look by Historic Environment Scotland guidance, could we have a look at the inventory of historic battlefields, CD-424, which, of course, we've just read that Historic Environment Scotland tells us is part of the baseline, specifically page 23 of CD 424.
I think it's fair to reflect that Historic Environment Scotland identified as the starting point for assessing the baseline.
Indeed. We're directed to have a look at the inventory as part of the baseline. Now, appreciating that you did say yesterday that the plan is indicative, the line of the government forces shown on page 23, that accords with the line drawn on the plans that we were looking at yesterday, produced by Mr. Dempsey. I take it you agree with that?
I think it is important to stress that this is nothing more than an indicative indication of the approximate locations of the two lines. I think anybody looking at the contouring on that map would suggest that Jacobite line has not been drawn with particular sensitivity, for example. And I know from my own discussions with Historic Environment Scotland and my research work on other battlefields in Scotland that these lines are not interpreted by Historic Environment Scotland as being anything other than general indications.
Well, we know from the guidance that the starting point for the information on the baseline of a battlefield is the record in the battlefield inventory, and we've heard Mr. Dempsey's evidence in relation to topography and munitions and how they support, in his view, the location of the government line in this respect. We may return to that later. As regards the western extreme of the government line, can I just check that you agree that that was fixed on Balcroic Cottage as it stands now?
I would agree that Balcroic Cottage, the knoll there, fits the fairly brief description that we have. It is a convenient point in the landscape that therefore fits that bill. I wouldn't want to say definitively that is the case, because I do wonder whether the extent of munitions deposits in, for example, Field F10 suggests that there's more action in that area, spreading a little further west than we knew. But as I stressed yesterday, in terms of identifying deployments, I don't like to speak definitively, as I know that these interpretations can change, which really is the crux of my point on the deployment lines here, is that I would not state as fact, as the promoter appears to have done, the specific locations of individual regiments.
I think you'll find, and this is the difference between us, that rather than state as fact that the government line was fixed on this knoll where Balcroic cottages are found, that, as Mr. Dempsey explained in his evidence, he has taken as a starting point the inventory. He has looked at the account of Mackay. He has taken into account the archaeology, and this is what informed the promoter's baseline. Do you take issue with Mr. Rattray's evidence in his precognition at Section 3, establishing the position of the government line? I don't know if you have that in front of you.
I do not, no.
I'll read short.
Thank you.
3.3. We can establish the line of the Scottish Government force as indicated by these two fixed points. Now I'm interested in the left wing, the western extreme, where Mr. Rattray says the left wing anchored in what is now known as Balcroke Cottage. He then goes on to talk about what we were discussing yesterday about Urard House at section 3 at the top. The left wing of the Scottish Government force consisted of Lieutenant Colonel Lauder with 200 of the choice of our army, Mackay, page 56. These men were positioned in front of a little hill wreathed with trees. This knoll is still visible today and is important in setting the position for the extreme left wing of the government lines. Mr. Rattray seems fairly clear. Do you disagree with him then, or just not want to be as certain?
No, I accept that that is a perfectly valid interpretation. I wouldn't instinctively disagree with it, but as I think you alluded to in your final point there, I am always reluctant to state definitively that everything is known.
Well, this is the point, isn't it, of identifying a baseline in accordance with Historic Environment Scotland guidance, and then moving on to stage 2 to assess the impact. So let's do that in terms of the key landscape characteristics which were agreed between the promoter and Historic Environment Scotland. Now, I find the most convenient place to look for this to be, as we were yesterday, the environmental statement for stage 3. CD 011, PDF 16, and this is chapter 15 of the ES, Cultural Heritage. If you have that in front of you, please. Now, I'm afraid I find the most convenient way, or the easiest way of understanding all of this to be to flick between the environmental statement and TS 414-13 and TS 414-14, and I'm afraid we then have to look at TS 414-23 and TS 414-24. Now, I knew I was going to say this, so I have all of these tabs open on my computer. Perhaps others with laptops could do the same. Yes, sorry. So we have the environmental statement, CD 011, PDF 16, Chapter 15, Cultural Heritage. And we then have Mr. Dempsey's drawings of the key landscape characteristics and special qualities, which are TS 414, 13, 14, 23 and 24. 13, 14, 23, 24.
I may require a larger table. Thank you.
As I say, you've been provided with some very large drawings.
I have,
well.
yes. So you'll have to bear with me if I'm
absolutely
not as efficient as you might otherwise wish. No, I'll manage. I'm fine. Sure.
You may wish to move your jug of water.
we go. Thank you. Okay, I shall endeavour to keep pace.
No, we'll take as much time as we need because I appreciate there's juggling and this is obviously important. So the environmental statement at 15.3.36, the key landscape characteristics of the battlefield through which the route of the existing A9 passes include the northern extent of the pass of Killiecrankie, the southern slopes of Craigellach, including the terraces to the south of Mains of Orkle, that protected the famous Highland charge of the Jacobite right wing towards the government forces. And the reason I've asked you to look at these plans is we see the locations of the key landscape characteristics are shown on these figures, these figures for the refined design. So, the southern slopes of Craigellach. I'll read, to save this becoming any more cumbersome than it has to be, I shall read the reference to the southern slopes of Craigellach as we find it in the Inventory of Historic Battlefields on page 3. The inventory boundary for the Battle of Killiecrankie is defined on the accompanying map and includes the following areas. Second bullet point, the southern slopes of Craigellach, the location of the government and Jacobite line, and the core of the battle as determined through archaeological fieldwork. This includes the remains of the buildings associated with the Jacobites' initial sniper action, Urard House and Gardens, and the position of the government baggage train within the Claverhouse stone field. So what I am interested in looking at TS414 13 and 14 is if you can identify for us the southern slopes of Craigellach and explain to us, with reference to the approach to be taken in managing change, what the impact that you have assessed on this key landscape characteristic will be as a result of the refined scheme.
Well, the location of the southern slopes of Craigellach is, I think, beyond contention, is it not?
Well, it may assist the reporter for you to say what you interpret the southern slopes of Craigellach to be.
I interpret them to be to in fact cover all of the south-facing sections between the essentially between the two opposing lines.
Just between the two opposing lines?
Stretching back and beyond in either direction. It's a very loose definition, the southern slopes.
Yes, the southern slopes of Craigellach in the Inventory of Historic Battlefields that I just read out does go on to make reference indeed to the position of the government baggage train within the Claverhouse stone field. Now, I don't think we've discussed that the location of the baggage train. Could you maybe assist the inquiry by pointing on this drawing to where that can be found?
On the plan indicated, the baggage train's identified with the I think it's purple shaded area around Claverhouse Stone, which has been associated with the cornfield referred to by General Mackay.
So I would be right, wouldn't I, saying that that's really down towards the bottom of the southern slopes of Craigellach, really getting closer to the River Garry, appreciating there's still quite a drop.
Yes, I would suggest that the by the time you're on the sort of plateau there in the Claverhouse Stone area, you're at the foot of those southern slopes.
So my question again, your assessed impact following the approach in managing change to the impact of the refined scheme on the key landscape characteristic of the southern slopes of Craigellach, please.
Well, by those definitions we've just discussed, then everything between the Killiecrankie heading westwards would be within that key landscape area.
Yes, and what is your assessment of the impact of the refined scheme on this key landscape characteristic?
That there is cumulative damage on top of the existing damage that had been done by the existing routing of the current A9, and I had concerns that the building up of land and the widening of the carriageway introduced an artificial terracing effect there.
We'll return to the alternative scheme in a minute. The next key landscape characteristic, the pass of Killiecrankie, your assessment of impact, please.
I have focused my assessments primarily on the areas in which the battlefield was fought, and so I'm primarily focused on the areas west of the Killiecrankie.
Your evidence to this inquiry, as noted in your precognition, is that all parts of the designated area of an infantry battlefield have equal status. Does that remain your position?
That is the position of Historic Environment Scotland.
Do you disagree with Historic Environment Scotland's view?
In general, I do not. In the specific situation that we find ourselves in here, where the promoter's assessment has been, since the decision was taken that online widening was essential, there has been no presentation of a proposal that does not impact the battlefield, and that necessitates us, therefore, to start giving qualitative judgments to specific characteristics and areas.
Now, this is a convenient point. I will return to northeast of Roanruri in just a second. Are you familiar with the definition of battlefield in the 1979 Ancient Monuments Act?
If you could point me to it, that would be a helpful refresher.
Is it a concept that you're familiar with?
Yes, but I wouldn't want to be ensnared into having to quote it directly without sight of it.
I shall try not to ensnare you. The best...
that would be appreciated.
The best place to look is actually KFCC 115. Now, I'm afraid that the copy of the Ancient Monuments Act itself, which has been lodged by the promoter, is as it was originally enacted. Sir, we'll provide you with the current version, but the quote I'm looking for is found in the Historic Scotland's designation policy lodged by the combined group KFCC 115. Annex 4 PDF, page 17. 115, Mr. Campbell. Find it myself, page 17. Now, I can tell you, having checked this last night, that paragraph 5 on PDF page 17 is an accurate quote from the current version in force of the 1979 Act. Again, I'll read this quickly. A battlefield is defined in law as an area of land over which a battle was fought, or an area of land on which any significant activities relating to a battle occurred, whether or not the battle was fought over that land. The Act does then help us understand that a battle is an engagement involving wholly or largely military forces that had the aim of inflicting lethal force against an opposing army. Does the definition, section 32B, for people's notes, of the 1979 Act, does the definition of a battlefield draw any distinction between areas on which fighting took place and those on which the battle was not fought?
No, it does not, although there is an obvious emphasis on lethal force and military activity.
In defining what a battle is, as opposed to helping us see what the law is regarding a battlefield.
Yes, I think this concurs with what we were just stating in terms of Historic Environment Scotland's view that within the defined area of the battlefield designation, all areas have equal status in law.
I would suggest it's comforting that Historic Environment Scotland are complying with the Ancient Monuments Act. Looking at the environmental statement again, we're working our way through the key landscape characteristics and impact in terms of the refined scheme before we return and look at comparison with the alternative scheme. Page 14 of the PDF, northeast of Roan Ruri. That will be TS 414-13. Can you see on this plan where northeast of Roan Ruri has been marked and agreed with Historic Scotland?
Yes, that is the shaded area south of Auckland Moor, if I'm right.
That's how I read the plan. That's to the north of the existing A9.
Yes.
In its entirety.
As drawn here, it is, yes.
And Mr. Dempsey's given evidence that that has been agreed with Historic Scotland. Your assessment of impact of the refined design is on this key landscape characteristic?
I would suggest to myself, for myself rather, that the key landscape characteristics are not bounded by arbitrary modern boundaries, as they are in the case here, and that due to the interruptions to the landscape caused by the current A9, that there is nothing to suggest to me that that feature could not extend closer to the Williamite line than it is suggest, because if that is indeed the area in which the attack of the MacDonald stalled, for example, then all of that area indicated is well beyond the effective range of the Williamite line as indicated.
See, Dr. Johnson, this is where we're not assisted in having any report from you where you set out the baseline and how you've identified special qualities and key landscape characteristics. Is it not right? You're just speculating as to what this could be without actually having undertaken a proper assessment.
It was not my role, nor have I been resourced or commissioned to provide a formal assessment. I have, as an objector to the scheme, assessed the information that's been provided, and I am simply providing my judgments on how I interpret them.
With respect, we are at a public inquiry where you are appearing with expertise and challenging the promoter's assessment. That's what you're doing, isn't it?
Yes, and I am suggesting to you that from my interpretation of the battlefield, that I think there are alternative interpretations for these features, and that that it's perfectly reasonable to say that we can't simultaneously accept that the Jacobite line stalled within that hashed area under fire from a line on the dotted line, which is well beyond even the travelling range of musket fire.
But you do accept that we do need to take an informed decision based on a professional assessment when undertaking development management decisions?
I do, and with respect, it will simply be a matter for the ministers and for the reporter to assess my interpretations alongside others.
Moving on to the next key landscape characteristic, agreed with Historic Environment Scotland, the terraces to the south of Mains of Orkle and level ground to the south of the A9. if you could identify these on the drawings, please.
I think they're indicated in TS-414-14. And they're identified here in the green hashed areas, both to the north and south of the A9.
And what's your assessment of impact adopting managing change of the refined design on this key landscape characteristic which lies to the north and south of the existing A9?
There is obviously a land take there on the south side of the northbound carriageway, which encroaches into that southern part of that terracing.
And we will look at the alternative scheme and its encroachment to the north of the existing A9. Now, we discussed earlier the baseline assessment undertaken by Transport Scotland, what Mr Rattray's evidence is regarding the left-turn flank of the government line. Can you help us on this plan by identifying where this knoll is on which Balcroic Cottage now sits?
That is just above the photograph there. It's immediately to the right of the settlement of Old Clune, at the terminus of the red dotted line.
And that red dotted line, according with the inventory of historic battlefields maintained by Historic Scotland.
And labelled on this plan as an approximate position.
Now, moving on to the next key landscape characteristic, I think the next key landscape characteristics we can deal with fairly swiftly, I suspect. The position of the government baggage train within Claverhouse Stonefield. I assume you have your assessment of impact on this key landscape characteristic is one of there will not be one?
I haven't identified a direct impact there. The only impact would be on any change in views looking northwards up the slopes.
Have you assessed what the changes in views would be?
I believe that with the screening that's excellent, and that is to some extent mitigated. I have previously expressed that it would have been helpful for me, at least in those assessments, to have more viewpoints and visualizations looking up the slope. But
we'll turn to those visualizations later. Finally, the River Garry and Soldier's Leap. Again, your assessment of impact of the refined design.
I don't anticipate an impact on the area of Soldier's Leap.
Now, again, we heard from Mr Dempsey. I believe you heard this evidence, and you presumably have read Mr Dempsey's precognition, where he sets out in considerable detail his assessment of the refined design and his comparison between the refined design and the alternative scheme. Could you please turn to Mr Dempsey's precognition 4.12.4? Now again, I'll try and take this quite quickly, but what I would what I will invite from you is your assessment of impact in accordance with managing change in terms of the alternative scheme widening to the north of the existing A9 on the southbound carriageway. Now, I'll try again and take this quickly by reading it out myself, if that's okay. 4.12.4, looking at the alternative scheme. Due to the presence of a wider carriageway and associated earthworks, operation of the refined design would result in visual intrusion and would reinforce the existing physical and visual severance of the southern slopes of Craigellach, northeast of Roan Ruaidhrí, key landscape characteristics, the northern and southern parts of the southern slopes of Craigellach, key landscape characteristic, and the north and south of the terraces to the south of Mains of Orkle, and the level ground to the south of the A9 key landscape characteristic. 4.12.5, taking the impacts of these key landscape characteristics into account, the impact on Killiecrankie battlefield resulting from the operation of the refined design has been assessed to be of moderate significance. It is not believed the overall effect of severance can be reduced, and therefore the residual impact on Killiecrankie battlefield during operation has been assessed to remain as of moderate significance. Now, looking at 4.12.6, which we'll pick through more slowly, during operation of the alternative scheme, there would be a cutting from approximately change 1600 to change 2160, approximately half a kilometre. At its widest point, this would be up to 25 metres wider than the existing A9 cutting at this location. We can, if necessary, look at the cutting referred to in the Development of Scheme report. Cross-sections for this cutting are provided there and shown in photomontages which have been produced. I'll read on. Hopefully you're following me. Due to its wide, steep nature and its partial rock face, which would increase its physicality, this cutting is considered to increase the existing severance between the southern part of the southern slopes of Craigellach and northeast of Roan Ruaidhrí key landscape characteristics. It is also considered that it would increase the existing severance of northern and southern parts of the southern slopes of Craigellach key landscape characteristic. In addition, during operation of the alternative scheme, road infrastructure in the form of an embankment, SUDS feature and access track to the south of the existing A9 between chainage 2800 and chainage 3300 and a cutting between approximately chainage 3100 and chainage 3300 to the north of the existing A9 would be present within the terraces to the south of Mains of Orkle and the level ground to the south of the A9 key landscape characteristic. This would increase the existing severance between the two parts of this key landscape characteristic. Last paragraph I'll read, 7. Taking the impact on these key landscape characteristics into account, the impact on Killiecrankie battlefield resulting from the operation of the alternative scheme has been assessed to be of large significance. It is not believed the overall effect of severance can be reduced, and therefore the significance of the residual impact on the Killiecrankie battlefield during operation has been assessed to remain large. Now, I still read that fairly quickly. I assume you're familiar with it through your preparations for inquiry and your requirement to take the promoter's position into account. What I'd like you to do is, well, I'll assist you with this. We'll go through each of the key landscape characteristics, and if you could tell me if you agree or disagree with Mr. Dempsey's assessment of the significance of impact of the alternative scheme, taking into account the key landscape characteristics. So the southern slopes of Craigellach, do you agree or disagree with Mr. Dempsey's assessment of the impact of the alternative scheme duelling on the southbound carriageway?
Well, I think I would predicate this with a comment that I raised in my precognition, that this alternative scheme was presented in relative terms quite recently. And my concern was over whether, under the scrutiny that the original proposed scheme had, which resulted in a considerable change leading to the refined scheme, whether there might not be potential for the alternative scheme to emerge through a similar process with improvement. So I wasn't comfortable with the assessment that the alternative scheme had gone through those same processes and was therefore a completely direct comparator. I'm willing to accept that is just my interpretation of that point.
Same question in relation to northeast of Roanruri. Do you agree or disagree with Mr Dempsey's assessment of the impact of the alternative scheme? If your answer is the same as you're just given for southern slopes of Craigellach, we can deal with this point and the remaining key landscape characteristics very quickly.
I think that would be the case.
Looking at these key landscape characteristics, would the location of the government line, if it was to be moved closer to the A9, have a bearing on the assessment?
In my view, what we're really alluding to there is the assessment, is the relative assessments of the basically, to simplify, because the momentum of the battlefield is in a southerly direction, and the areas in which direct engagement occurred are demonstrably, according to the archaeology and the assessments of the approximate lines, are within the corridor concerned. That any extension to the south side of the road, northbound, to me builds up land in a very sensitive area.
My question was whether where the government line was located would make a difference in terms of assessment of impact on the key landscape characteristics.
To me, it makes a difference to the impacts of the scheme on the sensitive southern side of the A9.
What about each key landscape characteristic as a whole, which we've just had we've had a look at on the drawings prepared by Transport Scotland?
Obviously, by moving the line forwards, you're bringing it onto some of the terraces indicated in the ground. Essentially, what we're talking about here is taking with one hand and giving with another, and so I wouldn't be satisfied that either of the schemes avoid impact.
How have you assessed impact on the cultural associations to which you referred in your evidence, again with reference to stages 1, 2 and 3 of managing change?
I think we covered quite a lot of this yesterday, in the sense that I feel that there is more weight to be given perhaps to the areas around the centre of the battlefield, around Urrad and Roanruri, Doom Clavers, places with strong cultural associations, and then therefore sensitive not only for the interpretation and understanding of the battle and the areas of combat, but also for potential visitor experience in those areas.
If I understand your evidence correctly, you are criticising the promoter in terms of commitments regarding enhancement. Are you aware of the commitments which have been given by the promoter?
I have seen references to some enhancement opportunities. I haven't seen anything formalised that would suggest an improvement in the amenity value of the battlefield. If I have missed something in there, then I would be delighted to be corrected.
Well, if I refer you to Chapter 21, Schedule of Environmental Commitments, part of the environmental statement, which which is CD011 PDF 23, Chapter 21, PDF page 44. So that's CD011 PDF 22, Chapter 21, Schedule of Environmental Commitments, page 44. Now, again, I do say this will come up on the screen, but I shall read this commitment out. Based on the guidance provided by Managing Change in the Historic Environment, Historic Battlefields, HES 2016, opportunities to offset the effects on Killiecrankie battlefield through measures such as increased interpretation and/or additional research to increase the ability to understand the battlefield will be explored with interested parties, including Historic Environment Scotland, the National Trust for Scotland, and the Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust. Were you aware of these binding commitments?
What I haven't seen, and I think this is where my stage of concern was, I haven't seen any detailed suggestion as to what that might actually be, and how that would be put into action. In light of the fact that there are other references elsewhere to the fact that Transport Scotland would not be able to take a lead on some of those issues.
Are you suggesting that the Roads Authority is the appropriate party for taking the lead on such matters? Is it not more appropriate for the lead to be taken, as set out in this commitment, by the appropriate statutory body supported by the National Trust and by the Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust?
I was simply suggesting that for the comfort of those such as myself that are looking in from the outside, the comfort that there was a commitment, a real commitment to ensuring that those enhancements were effected timiously.
Well, I've taken you to the evidence. I think we can move on. Now, I appreciate you may not have delved into the hearing statements for next week, but really just a final question. Are you aware of the work undertaken by the promoter in developing the Highland Discovery app, which includes stories, songs, including with association to the Jacobites, and the development of a walking app in conjunction with the soldiers of Killiecrankie, which will deal specifically with the Killiecrankie battlefield?
Yes, I was aware of the development of those initiatives. I'm not sure if you are suggesting that that the development of an app is sufficient compensation for the cumulative damage on the battlefield. My suggestion yesterday is that as it is cumulative damage and there was no sort of enhancement as a result of the existing A9, that there was a sense of obligation there that I suspect goes beyond the production of an app.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Nothing from me. Anything in re-examination, Mr. Bucks?
Just had a couple of points which are perhaps to clarify something. There has been a lot of discussion about the physical impact of assets within the CPO area or just outside it. Can you explain the difference between physical impact and impact on setting?
Yes, I think we alluded to this yesterday, in that I was concerned by some of the suggestions that if an asset lay outside of the CPO boundary and therefore was not physically impacted by it, that therefore the impact was not significant. And as we also suggested, that it's not only a battlefield is not defined solely by its archaeology. It's the whole collection of cultural associations, specific settings, intervisibilities, and of course amenity value as well.
And perhaps a final point, that we've debated a lot about where the Williamite line might have been, and therefore where the fighting was concentrated. In relation to this road proposal, what do you think is the significance of where that battle action took place?
Well, I think there's 2 points. I know we've been over the line in some detail. Firstly, I think that there is clear evidence from the archaeology that the road corridor is in the very heart of the battlefield, in the sense that it is an area over which the armies were passing, over which the Highlanders were charging in the very final moments of their assault, and over which the government forces were firing. In some respects, the significance of the land that is being discussed, I don't feel is degraded by moving the army a few meters either way. I think it is, and I think it would be self-evident to anybody outside of the room that the cumulative damage that is being done. And even Historic Environment Scotland stated at their withdrawal from their objections that damage is significant.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson. I've got no further questions.
Sorry, I wonder if I might be allowed a question just in clarification.
In clarification,
of course. And I'll ask it through you, sir, so that if you're not happy with it, you can stop the witness answering. But it concerns the inventory of historic battlefields. My learned friend, Mr. Milne, has taken you to the page relating to this battle, and indeed the documents lodged by the promoters contain that page, as well as pages from other inventories. Thinking more widely about the inventory, however, from when does it date, and what was the genesis for its creation? Do you know that?
From memory, I believe the first round of inventory battlefields was designated in 2011, and my understanding was that the designation of historic battlefields in Scotland came out of a political commitment to protection of Scotland's battlefields.
And just to follow up, does Historic Scotland publish on its website, and perhaps in hard copy as well, if that's not too old-fashioned, the reasoning for having an inventory and what it's trying to do?
Yes, I believe that's covered in the guidance.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. We're moving on to hear from Mr. Rattray now, aren't we? Probably sensible to take our mid-morning break early then, rather than interrupt him full flow, given his location.
I agree with that.
Okay, let's break until 10:45.
I think I'll need most of the break to tidy up.
Okay, welcome back. We'll make a start to hearing further evidence. Good morning, Mr. Rattray. We can see you on the screen there. Mr. Bax, would you like to introduce Mr. Rattray?
Yes. Good morning, or good afternoon, perhaps, Mr. Rattray. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. Excellent. You're coming over loud and clear, I have to say. Excellent. I just wonder, therefore, whether you could read us your precognition whenever
yes.
you want to start.
Okay. This is my precognition in relation to the A9 dueling Killiecrankie to Glen, Garry, public inquiry, and My name is Thomas Ranawilliam Rattray. My qualifications are I have a BSc Honours in Mining Engineering from Exeter and Leeds Universities. I worked as a surveyor and soil mechanics engineer for local engineering consultancy. Worked as an engineer on a number of mining projects for more than 10 years. I have a mine manager's certificate of competency and an MBA, as I mentioned. My occupation currently is Director of Postgraduate Programs at the AFG College of the University of Aberdeen, here in Doha. My relevant background is I have a long interest in the Gaelic language, and I am an amateur historian with a particular interest in the Jacobite period. I was a member of the YKK Living History Organisation from 1991. I assisted in the development and presentation of the TV programme, Cogi Iskiol, for BBC Nahalpa. This film investigated the history and development of the Scottish Highland warrior. One of the sections of the series was on the Battle of Killiecrankie and its pivotal role in the development of the famous Highland Charge, which played such a decisive role in subsequent Jack-like campaigns. I lived in Alp Klein, Killiecrankie, from 1996 to 2003. I took an active interest in the archaeological investigation of the Two Men in the Trench television series, discussing progress with Dr. Pollard at several of the investigative sites, including Lagnawood Settlement and Ochil Moor. In addition to this, my background as a mining engineer and having worked in civil and mining construction projects also allows me to have some understanding of the technical issues in a project of this nature. In this analysis, the focus will be on giving evidence as to the position of the two armies, with a particular focus on the final positions of the armies as they clash. The evidence will be presented so as to demonstrate the current proposal for building the northbound causeway on the south side of the current main line will result in a greater loss for future generations, both from the perspective of further understanding the battle, as well as the ability of future generations being able to walk the critical ground where the final stages of this bloody conflict will get. Establishing the position of the government line. The left wing of the Scottish Government force consisted of Lieutenant Colonel Lauder with 200 of the choice of our army, according to Mackay, page 56. These men were positioned in front of a little hill, reeds and trees. This knoll is still visible today and is important in setting the position for the extreme left wing of the government line. Again, from General Hugh Mackay's account, the centre of his force was positioned in front of a house in the garden. Mackay recounts how in the retreat of his men, he visited the garden which was behind and considered taking position in the garden. He goes on to say how he discounted the idea of defending an enclosure so far from new relief. The position of the house is well established. The garden is also important. Mackay considered using this as a redoubt. The garden was of a design to put them in there in expectation of succour from Mackay. This means that when Mackay made his dispositions, there must have been room beyond these features that could accommodate his two troops of horse. Importantly, we know that this enclosure could not have been to the south of Borough House, whose position is very close to the steep bank in the field containing the Neolithic standing place. We can establish the line of the government force as indicated by these two fixed points. The left wing, anchored on what is now known as Balcroyd Cottage, and the centre in front of what is now known as Borough House. The position of the original building was established by Pollard in 2003, pages 218 to 2018, page 202. The centre of the government army must have been in front of the current Borough House, particularly as space required to position two troops of force. This gives us a position of the government line well within 100 metres of the current A9. This means that a line drawn between these two positions implies that government troops would have been in front of where the modern memorial camp stands. Clovis 2. Mackay refers to boggy ground. Today, evidence in the ground surrounding the memorial camp. and the right, there was boggy ground, which on a sudden could not, without hazard of bogging, be galloped. Mackay, page 33. In other words, Mackay indicated that boggy ground formed a gap between Balfour's regiment on the left and the remaining battle line to the right. The line of the government troops continued to the front of Royal House along the lower surface of Run. Run is a Gaelic word referring to a flat, broken field. The government right wing then continued with Leland's regiment, followed by Mackay's regiment, under the command of General Hugh Mackay's brother. The cavalry was at the lower end of the flat sloping field, Grimbury, and the Jacobite cavalry opposing them at the top of the sloping field. The leaders of both armies were concerned to ensure that they were not outflanked. In addition to this, General Mackay was also concerned to maintain a straight line. Mackay refers to finding that Balfour had advanced too far his regiment out of line, and he took action to change this, because it was only to bring them in line with the rest, lest they should be flanked. Mackay, 1833, page 53. In addition to this evidence from contemporary accounts of the battle, the recent archaeology would also place Mackay's regiment well into the area indicated as F7, F8, CPO-340, followed over 2003. We spent a lot of time walking up and down the hill over which the Jacobites charged. They go on to explain how the ground took the form of a natural terraces which drops down the gradient like a huge flight of stairs. They explained the importance of this and how these terraces played a significant role in the choreography of the battle. They explain how a man moving down the hill would at times be out of sight of someone looking up. Pollard and Oliver, 2003, say, the evidence from the musket ball matches this picture exactly. The more recent archaeological and metal detector survey conducted by Headland Archaeology in 2018, CPO-340-4, further corroborates this evidence, with a number of musket balls and pistol balls being found in the area F7 and F8. The pistol shot found is of particular interest in that they were splattered, which indicates that there had been an impact. The position of the splattered shot, Headland Archaeology 2018 illustration 4, is further indication the government line was well within 100 metres of current aim. Pistols were a particular weapon of the Gaels in the Jacobite army, and so there is a high possibility that these splattered pistol shots were found at the position of felled government soldiers. Cameron of Lochiel remarked that a few or none of his fellow Highlanders were killed after they drew their swords, and the greatest part of them were felled within a few paces of their enemy, where they received the last fire. Roman 1842, page 271. This evidence, taken in conjunction with the position of the government line established above, indicates that a large number of Jacobite Highlanders would have been killed in close proximity to current A9. This means that the poignant scene described by Lochiel, when the Highlanders returned after the battle and the enemy lay in heaps, almost in the order they were posted, would have taken place in this area, very close to the current A9. Conclusion. It is important to point out that the route that is currently proposed was selected before the completion of the archaeological and battlefield analysis. This raises a serious question as to how the lowest impact route could have been chosen without having all the facts to hand. The A9 already exists and runs through the heart of the battlefield. It is agreed that the government line was to the south of the existing A9. This analysis is established from both original accounts of the battle from General Hugh Mackay and from the account of Campbell of Lochiel that the government line was within 100 metres of the current A9. The evidence is further supported by the archaeology. The battlefield on the north of the A9 was already disconnected by the current A9 from the area of the most intense fighting, thereby devaluating its significance in relation to where the final stage of the battle took place. In addition, a significant amount of ground in the north, on the north side in that area, F12, Barred Archaeology 2015 Constructing the new northbound carriageway on the south side will cause significant further degradation into the area where the battle was decided. So many participants were killed and most intense fighting took place. This ground is critical in allowing future generations to visualise the battle in front of the government line. Constructing the new carriageway on the north side of the Quarantine line would result in significantly lower impact in terms of understanding how the battle was fought. This option would also permit future generations to walk the ground and get a sense of where their ancestors fought and died. Historical significance. The Battle of Killiecrankie is significant from a number of perspectives. It marked a turning point in the evolution of battle tactics and the development of modern warfare. The first use of the mace, the last use of the two-handed sword of William Wallace fame, also in the evolution of the modern bayonet. From a Scottish perspective, it is the last major battle which pitted an almost exclusively Gaelic-speaking Highland army against a non-Gaelic-speaking government Lowland army. We would argue that these factors all add to the future value of this important site from a cultural, military and tourist perspective, and should not be lightly thrown away. There is nothing to prevent this becoming a site of significant international importance, attracting an increasing number of visitors from all over the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rattray. Just a couple of follow-up points. You have suggested a probable location for the Williamite line at the start of the battle. I think you've heard Dr. Johnston's view that it is impossible to pinpoint exactly where the battle line was. Perhaps you can explain, firstly, what your view is, and secondly, why the possible location of the battle line is so important in relation to this road proposal.
Well, yes, my view is sort of partly outlined in my correct recognition, is based on the contemporary accounts of Hugh Mackay and to a slightly lesser extent of Cameron of Lochiel. Hugh Mackay is very clear in noting on his left wing the knoll, reeds and trees that Mr. Dempsey also referred to in his evidence. So in determining my view of the possible line of the government force, I've used this as the left anchor point. As you move across the field, we can see that we then move towards the current tomb clavers or memorial.
Sorry to interrupt. Would it be useful for the reporter to have those figures from TS 205 on the screen? Yes, is that possible to do?
205, I actually have it in front of me. Sorry, yes,
figures 2B, 3, 4 and 5.
Yes, I think probably what would be useful...
Just if you hold on a second, Mr. Rattray, we'll just get them on the screen here.
Could we refer to 8B first? Yes, that one. I think that's it, yes.
That's 2B, is that right?
2B. Sorry, 2B. I'm actually looking at 8B. Bear with me a second.
The numbers on the bottom right hand.
The numbering's on the bottom right, I think. Should be 2B, 3, 4 and 5 there.
Okay. Well, I think I'm looking at the... Oh, no. Sorry, please bear with me. But to be honest, I think I may not have a printed copy on, but if we look at the one that you're looking at on the screen, I can certainly talk to that. And I do now have it in front of me as well. So if we go back to if we look at the plan and look in particular at the left wing of the government positions, I think we can see the road leading up to the current Balcroy cottage, just to the right of Alpline. And so that is the point that I've taken as the left wing of the government line, as the most likely position of the government line. If we move across, you can see two clavers. This is the ground that that Hugh Mackay refers to, that I commented on in my pre-commission, which is boggy ground. And today it's still, you can see it is very boggy ground. If we move across, we can see Urad House, the current Urad House, and the evidence, so far as I understand it, is that this coincides pretty closely to the original building that Hugh Mackay and Cameron O'Loughlin refer to as a gentleman's house. So in looking at and placing the government line, I've taken into account the quote that I also give in my recognition about the redoubt, a walled, presumably walled garden that would have offered Hugh Mackay's retreating government forces at the end of the battle some hope of defending themselves. So if we then think about and take into account how Hugh Mackay appeared to be very keen to ensure his line remained straight, we can draw a line that is probably some distance in front of the current Urad House, and I would have it placed toward the top of the current wall garden. If we then continue to the right, you can see we have F6 extension. We've got F8, F6 extension, and then we move into F7. Now, what I think is of particular interest is the relatively high density of musket shot found in F6 extension. Now, if we, again, in my recognition, I referred to Cameron O'Loughlin's comment about how Mackay's regiment, which he encountered with his fellow clansmen, many of them died in the position they were placed. I would argue that this probably happened pretty close to the region where those musket balls are found. So if you look at the musket balls and you move back down towards the standing stone in the Neolithic field on the lower slopes, or the very bottom of the slopes of Craig Eilach, behind, you go down, if you're walking down there, you will go down a relatively steep bank, and this is the bank I think was referred to by two men of the trench as part of the step ground. If you continue down, you will see you then come to the very steep bank leading down to the stacked fields with the Neolithic standing stone. So, reverting back to your question, the key decision, the key sort of evidence that I used to place the line, Balcroy cottage on the left, substantially in front of Urad House from Mackay's own account of the battle, from the archaeological evidence which the two men in the trench produced and which has been further added to by subsequent archaeological metal detector surveys. In producing that line, I have anchored it on Balcroy cottage, as I said. I've actually tried to simulate this by drawing a line and then swinging it. And you can see that it swings, it's possible for it to swing so that Hastings' regiment on the right-hand side might even be on the current position of the A9. Could I ask you to now refer to the, just get the plan. Could we refer to figure 5?
Figure 5, do we have that? Just wait a second till it comes up. Yes, we have it now, the LiDAR.
Yes, I can see it, and I have a paper copy. Now, Mr. Dempsey in his evidence, as you can see from this diagram, placed the government line very close to the very steep bank leading down to the cornfield that is shown in that annotation. I would agree with Dr. Johnston's comment that the likelihood of Mackay placing his armies so close to a pretty formidable barrier is relatively low. But also, if we look at Lieben's regiment, it is split with probably quite a significant, I haven't actually walked that ground because it's so heavily wooded now, but you can see from this topographical look at it that that's quite a significant feature between splitting his regiment, splitting it from Mackay on the right. Also, for me, it's this position is extremely unlikely when you take it across, being so close to Oran Pass. I would argue that it's unlikely that there is enough room for the two troops of horse and the artillery to be placed in front of the wall garden that was present at the time, according to Mackay's account. So the other thing that strikes me is that, and this is probably just happenstance, but the government line looks extremely parallel to the existing A9. I think within the range of possibilities, as Dr. Johnston said in his evidence, it is very difficult to establish exactly a particular line for an army in a dynamic process. And we need to remember these two armies faced each other for over 2 hours. We know that Mackay had to bring back Balfour's regiment because they went out of line, and I suspect that the two lines did move. However, I think the archaeology is very strong to show that the government line must have been probably 60 or 70 meters or in front of the position indicated in this line. And I think the key point here is that if we look at Mackay's regiment, they placed on the right-hand side of that sort of slight ravine, and it's annotated Lieben's regiment on the left. The interesting thing for me is, if they fired from this position, according to my calculations, none of their shot could have hit, would have been able to impact where we have found the musket balls on field F7. Because if you do a cross-section using, I did a cross-section using the contours, you can see that the trajectory of any muskets fired from this position make it, they would either have hit the second step in front of them, or they would have gone right over the heads of the advancing Cameron Highlanders. So the interesting thing, of course, is if you carry this simulation forward, if you move, the closer you move to the second bank, the less likely it is that any of those shot could have impacted where they've been found by the archaeology. It's only when Mackay's regiment stands on top of the second bank that you can see how that munitions that found by the two men in the trench and subsequently in more recent metal detector surveys could have impacted where they did. So my argument is this actually gives even more compelling evidence to show that the government line could not have been below that second bank in front of the position indicated here. And that would, therefore, put the Scottish Government Army at the top of that bank with this flat ground in front of them, very close to the A9, and I think there is a very strong possibility, taking into account this and the metal detector findings, that this is where the highest casualties took place, and this is where Mackay's regiment was decimated by the Camerons and other areas.
Thank you, Mr. Rattray. I just did want to come on to that. Regarding that, as you call it, the critical step on field F6 and F7, how do you respond to Mr. Dempsey's evidence given yesterday that this terrace is man-made?
Yes, well, I have to say I look at that with some scepticism. If you look at, when we walked over the ground, there is clear evidence of dumped material from the original construction of the A9. And when you observe that material, you'll see that the makeup of the material includes many very large crushed stones. However, if we look at the material just above F7, and this is superficial, I haven't done any core samples or anything like that, but for me, from observing it, it looks like alluvial material. Therefore, I would argue that there is a strong possibility that this is post-glacial alluvial deposit. And if we look at the post-glacial period, we know that the glaciers melted slowly and resulted in some very big deposits of alluvial material referred to as terminal moraines. But also, I would argue that this area will require significant further investigation to determine whether the ground is in fact alluvial or whether it was material that was deposited in order to, shall we say, allow access to the A9.
If it was man-made, would that? What would be your view on the consequences?
If it was man-made, then I would accept that if there is convincing evidence put forward. I would still say that doesn't alter the importance of this piece of ground to understanding the battle. If it's man-made, then we can certainly take that into account.
Thank you, Mr. Rattray. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bucks. Mr. Milne, any questions for this witness?
Sorry, I can't hear the questions. It's very faint.
Can you hear me, Mr. Rattray?
Yes, I can.
Right, I'm not sure. Yes, I think you can see.
Yes.
See now. Great. Thank you. I just have a few questions, Mr. Rattray. Looking at your precognition and the evidence you've just given about the extreme left flank of the government army, I wondered if you could have in front of you the extract which the promoter lodged from Mackay. Now, that, I'm not sure how the technology is going to work, how you do this, but it's document TS-440 and page 67 of the PDF.
Could I ask you to put it up, because I should be able to read it from my computer screen.
This may now just happen by magic, I'm not sure. Can you see that?
I can see it, but I can't read it.
Well, what I'll do, I'll read out a sentence from your precognition and then read from Mackay and put to you my proposition.
Yes, that's better.
Very good. Actually, if Neil, if you could scroll down closer to the bottom. We're looking for a line which begins Colonel Lauder. Now, I can see that Colonel Lauder was pofted. Posted, there we go. That's how they used to write. 3 of your precognition, the left wing of the Scottish Government force consisted of Lieutenant Colonel Lauder with, quote, 200 of the choice of our army, end quote, Mackay, page 56. These men were positioned in front of, quote, a little hill wreathed in trees. I wonder if you would like to change positioned in front of in your precognition to positioned upon, in light of what we're reading from Mackay.
Yeah, I'm not particularly fixated on that because it doesn't really affect the swing of the potential government line. I would though say that we know that Balfour's regiment advanced forward of this position, and it may well be that Lauder's men also, at some point during the 2 hours the two armies face each other, moved from this position. I would say that, as Dr. Johnston indicated in his evidence, this is not a fixed position that's written in stone.
Now, as regards the position of the government line, there's clearly some disagreement between you and Mr. Dempsey. I assume you're familiar with the Historic Environment Scotland maintain inventory of historic battlefields. Perhaps we could have
I'm happy to be informed of it. I have to say that I haven't read it in massive detail. I would point out that I am amateur. I have a full-time job, and I'm just doing the best I can as an amateur.
I absolutely appreciate and understand that. What I wanted to take you to was the inventory, which is CD-424, which again will be brought up in front of you, and specifically page 23 of the PDF, which contains an outline of the inventory battlefield and marked in red and blue the lines of the government and Jacobite forces. Now, do you agree or disagree with the lines as depicted on this drawing?
I would disagree with them. I think they're broadly, and again, as Dr. Johnston indicated, they're possibly broadly correct. My position is that I would have the right wing of the government army in order for Mackay's regiment to have been at the top of the trench, and as I indicated at the top of the second bank, as I call it, in order for them to have been there, and in order for their fire to have landed where the archaeology is founded, the Scottish government right wing would have to be substantially closer to the A9. And in my simulations of it, I would actually have Hastings' regiment pretty much on the edge of the Glen where the bridge crosses. I think this is consistent with the archaeological finds. It's consistent with the account of Mackay and Cameron of Lochiel, and it's also consistent with the archaeological finds.
Do you disagree with Professor Pollard's interpretation of the choreography of the battle as set out by Mr. Dempsey in his evidence?
Well, actually, I think it would be very interesting if you could bring up the cross-section that Mr. Dempsey used in his evidence, because I think that is very important to understanding the battlefield choreography. Unfortunately, I don't remember what the reference number was.
Is that the 2 men in a trench video?
2 men in a trench, And
or the simulation.
Listening to the simulation where he had showing the effect of the terraces.
Right. I wasn't intending to take you to that. I just wanted to put the simple question to you as to whether you agreed or disagreed. And if you disagree, then that's fine for you to say that. That's all that I wanted to take.
I would actually I would disagree, and I think Pollard and Oliver are actually mistaken. I suspect they didn't draw a section using the contours. And in fact, if you look and think about their evidence more clearly, they indicate that Cameron's men were shielded and couldn't be seen, but they were shielded and couldn't be seen and therefore couldn't be shot at either. As I indicated in my evidence, if you draw a cross-section from the position, using the contours, if you draw a cross-section of the position of Mackay's army, it is impossible for their shot to have landed where the archaeology is found. I think Pollard and Oliver probably made the same mistake. It would be quite easy to accurately determine that. If I was in Scotland, I would take my recently purchased Dumpy level and do a level survey and work out an accurate cross-section. Of course, I understand that the trajectory of musket balls, there would be some drop. But as I said earlier, my short, quick calculation was in order to, if they fired from the position Mr. Dempsey has them faced, and they missed the top of that bank by half a metre, assuming they could fire that accurately, their shot would have been at least 2 metres above where it's actually been found.
Thank you, Mr. Rattray. The evidence given by Mr. Dempsey is that where you have put the line of the government force lies without the out with the compulsory purchase order boundary for the refined design. I just wanted to check that that's something that you did not take issue with.
I accept that. I accept the compulsory purchase line is pretty much parallel with the edge of the trees. I would express disappointment that there's been no archaeological investigation of that ground. The assumption that it is man-made has, in my opinion, without proper investigation, been accepted. I feel that musket balls in that area, in the trees, it might be possible to find musket balls in that, what I think may be alluvial deposit.
I just put it to you, Mr. Dempsey's evidence, paragraph 4.9.8, where he sets out his position that the mound is of relatively recent origin and likely to be related to the construction of the existing A9. He goes on to tell the inquiry about the results of geotechnical investigations, which suggest that the mound is comprised of topsoil up to 1.3 metres thick. Now, Mr. Dempsey, of course, also took us to further evidence, but there has been geotechnical investigation at that particular site.
Could I comment on that?
Yes, please.
That actually supports the comment that I've made. I have worked as a mining engineer. I worked on gold deposits, and what happens what I would argue potentially happened in the post-glacial period is you had natural sorting of the material that was being washed down from the heights. And so therefore, Mr. Dempsey's investigation showing topsoil, alluvial soil, they're very similar, would support my argument that there's a strong possibility that this is not man-made.
Thank you, Mr. Rattray. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Milne. Nothing from me. Anything in the way of re-examination, Mr. Bax?
No, that's adequate for me. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, thank you very much, Mr. Rattray, and we'll move on to your next witness, Mr. Bax.
Thank you, Mr. Rattray.
Thank you. Thank you.
That worked well.
It did?
It did work well. Mr. Crombie, was it? Who's Mr. Crombie? This is Mr. Crombie. So we got Mr. Crombie and then you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to introduce Mr. Crombie, who's a metal detectorist, and just ask you, Mr. Crombie, if you could read your recognition whenever you're ready.
My name is Jim Crombie. I am a metal detectorist.
Switch on your microphone, Mr. Crombie.
Start again. My name is Jim Crombie. I'm a metal detectorist. I've been metal detecting for about 20 years. My metal detecting finds have been mentioned in several published books, including Tiverton Cloth by Peter Mander and Cloth Seals by Stuart Elton. Hundreds of my munitions recoveries were referred to in battlefield archaeologist Dr. Natasha Ferguson's PhD dissertation. This work included providing grid references for each pistol and musket ball and associated finds recovered from 3 separate locations. Those locations were Cleash, Scotland Well and Wester Bogweddy. None of these 3 locations had previously been investigated, and I subsequently discovered a substantial deposit of munitions at each location. On several occasions over the years, I have been involved with nationally important excavations. These include the SERF project, where I was working under Professor Gordon Noble, Aberdeen University, and Dr. Kenny Brophy, Glasgow University. The Grass Ridge project, more specifically, the Instituto Roman Fortress part of this project, with Dr. David Woolliscroft and his wife, Dr. Birgitta Hoffman. With regard to battlefield sites, I've helped survey and identify metal-detected finds recovered from, for example, the Sheriff Muir battlefield site. This survey happened over a full year, with archaeologist John Gooder overseeing our survey work. I also did similar work over a 2-year period at the Battle of Bannockburn survey, working under Professor Tony Pollard and Neil Oliver. Our objective was to locate where the actual battle took place. I've also helped archaeologist Douglas Spears in providing metal detectorists for his Battle of Inverkeithing, sometimes known as Petrivy, survey. Mr. Spears is the Fife County Council archaeologist. I have also helped and provided a team of metal detectorists for the Battle of Killiecrankie 2015 metal detecting survey. Guard Archaeology supervised their artefact recovery work during the survey. Representatives of the Killiecrankie and Fincastle Community Council requested an informal metal detecting survey of the area besides Old Fiscali House and the Skirmish Field area, where the Suds Basin is to be constructed. The survey area in question had remains of unscheduled ruinous building foundations known as Asset 334 located within it, a Bronze Age standing stone, a post-medieval battlefield site, Iron Age hut circles, and an early Christian church are all located nearby. The metal detecting survey was carried out by me and Miss Abby Muffet on Sunday, the 8th of September 2019. Abby and I were required to locate metal objects within the designated survey area. We recorded grid references for each find and bagged each find. The recovery details for each find was written on the relevant plastic finds bag. We then submitted these finds for assessment and processing into the Scottish Treasure Trove system. We reported back to the community members once the outcome of this process had been reached. Very little was known about this small inhabited area before our search. Their finds, some of which were large in size, demonstrated to us that no metal detecting survey work had previously been undertaken at this location. The first of our recorded finds was a file used for woodworking. Miss Emily Freeman of the Treasure Trove Unit explained she had viewed similar examples which looked exactly like our find, dating from the medieval period to a more modern time. Other finds included a fishing reel, which had a narrow spindle, so was an early type, a hand-operated water pump, an asd, and lead splatter. These finds collectively suggested that a settlement existed in this area which had at least one person working with wood. The finds also suggested that the settlement had its own water supply. Taking the National Museum of Scotland's curator's comments regarding dates for our finds into consideration, this ruinous area we searched could date from as early as the Roman period up to the post-medieval period and perhaps later. The aforementioned artefacts have subsequently been officially disclaimed. One of the finds, splatter, is created as a direct result of a lead munition being fired from either a pistol or musket and hitting a solid surface, then changing shape. The lead splatter found during our survey has special significance because of its location within the infantry battlefield, on land controlled by Robertsons of Fiscali. This was the first investigation of the area around Old Fiscali building, Asset 334. The find spot for the splatter was November 91684-63105. The ASD, receiving an official disclaimer certificate issued by Miss Emily Freeman from the Treasure Trove Unit. The ASD was assessed by specialist Dr. Gemma Cruikshanks of the National Museum Scotland. Dr. Cruikshanks explained her thoughts to Miss Emily Freeman, then Miss Emily Freeman shared them with me. The ASD, as a woodworking tool, had not changed in shape or form over several thousand years. This made attributing an accurate date to our ASD very difficult indeed, meaning the Roman, medieval and post-medieval periods all remain dating options and possibilities for our ASD. The ASD was recovered from a depth of 10 to 20 centimetres and had a substantial coating of rust. The attached rust alone suggested it had been under the ground for hundreds of years. Evidence of Bronze Age, Iron Age and also later historic period activity had been recorded by government bodies such as PASMA for this search area. None of these aforementioned historic periods could be ruled out for our ASD. The fine spot for the ASD was November 91689 63100. The best metal detecting conditions required the survey area to be flat and have no obstacles obstructing the metal detector's swing. The coil part of the metal detector has to be as close to the ground surface as it possibly can be. The metal detector's detecting swing has to be continuous, so without obstruction. Wet and sodden ground conditions help enormously by increasing detection depth. Drier conditions reduce recovery depth substantially, from a few feet during the winter months to several inches during the height of the summer. Metal detecting surveys carried out during the dry summer months in ideal conditions will recover a lot fewer artefacts than a similar survey carried out over the same area during the wetter, more conductive winter months. Any conclusions reached after a metal detecting survey has taken place should take into account the month the survey took place and how much rainfall there had been when the survey had taken place. Surveying fields that are ploughed annually will produce fresh finds each year. Few fresh finds will be brought within detecting range if the land is not ploughed. This is the case for most of the land that forms the Battle of Killiecrankie scheduled area. Nettles, tall grass, trees and ruinous foundations, for example, restrict any search. Weed, shrub and plant growth within our designated search area was substantial on the 8th of September 2019. This made metal detection impossible within much of the designated search area. The area where the Suds Basin is to be constructed was in a similar state, covered in tall grass, so the ground conditions there were undetectable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crombie, for giving us that overview of the conditions that can make metal detecting problematic. Just on the area that you did for us, I'd just like to confirm the area. Could we just get CD 13 PDF 50, figure 15.1a? Is it possible to get that up? If we could just come in on, it's asset 334. Perfect. Thank you very much. Now that lies just beside the Suds Basin, adjacent to the CPO. Sorry, Mr. Crombie, can you just confirm that's the area that you surveyed for us?
Yes. Asset 334 was the area we searched on the 8th of September 2019.
And in your opinion, does the splatter found resemble splatter found elsewhere on that, in the Killiecrankie battlefield area?
Yes, I found splatter during the 2015 survey, while Garry Archaeology were supervising the metal detecting survey. So I can confirm that to me is splatter, the item I found.
Thank you, Mr. Crombie.
Thank you, Mr. Bucks. Anything for this witness, Mr. Miller?
No, thank you, sir. I have no questions.
Nothing from me either. So no re-examination.
No re-examination.
Perfect. In that case, thanks very much, Mr. Crombie. Your next witness, Mr. Bucks, is yourself, I think. And Mr. Campbell's leading your evidence, is that right? Yeah.
Mr. Bax, good morning. I think you should have your recognition in front of you. You tell us that you're James Bax. You live in Killiecrankie. In fact, you live at Drummoon, do you? Which is, I think, east of the battlefield.
Yes, I do.
That's right. Could you read your recognition, please?
This is the recognition of James Bax in support of the objection lodged on behalf of the combined group of objectors in Killiecrankie. I have been resident in Killiecrankie for over 20 years. I intend to present the evidence on several topics listed in the combined group's statement of case, referring specifically to alignment, refined scheme, lay-bys, skirmish fields and noise. In addition, the combined group objects to the inclusion of the alternate design which forms part of Transport Scotland's report to set out the background to decision-making that informed the development of the proposed scheme. Mindful of the reporter's appeal at the pre-inquiry meeting that there were to be no surprises, we were unclear about the validity of the new alternative design at this stage in the planning process. The alternative design is a completely new, albeit academic, plan which we saw for the first time on the 24th of October 2019. This is the third plan that we are required to study, coming after the Stage 3 final design of November 2017 and the refined scheme of October 2018. The alternative design develops a road plan with widenings on the southbound carriage in response to what TS says was an implied preference for southbound widening from some Killiecrankie residents. The statement of case for the combined group makes it clear that the group is not in a position to propose an alternative. However, the group believes that all the damage that the refined scheme will inflict on the battlefield and quality of life for residents could be avoided if the scheme were reconsidered. According to the executive summary of the objective report, the alternative design has been developed to an equivalent level of detail to the refined scheme. The starting point for the alternative design was where the southbound widening option of DMRB Stage 2 finished. We do not agree that the alternative design has been developed to an equivalent level of detail to the refined scheme, nor do we accept that southbound widening option were to be developed to such a level that the starting point would be where DMRB Stage 2 finished. TS asserts in the executive summary that a comparison of the alternative design with the refined scheme demonstrates that the former is not better than the latter. The report goes on to explain that this refers to cultural heritage. TS has made a material change in its assessment of cultural heritage, where the conclusion of DMRB2 was that cultural heritage, in particular the assessment of impact on the battlefield, was not a differentiator. TS now says that cutting required from approximately chainage 1600 to chainage 2160 in the alternative design is considered to be a differentiator. Therefore, the alternative design would be worse for the historic environment than the refined scheme, according to TS. TS wrote to Historic Environment Scotland when responding to its objection to the Stage 3 design. A full assessment of alignment option has been undertaken as part of the DMRB Stage 2 option assessment. That full assessment was available for HES to scrutinise at the time. We are not aware of what scrutiny, if any, there has been of the alternative design by HES or any statutory consultee, nor do we know what comments, if any, a consultee made to TS's new conclusion. It is impossible for us to comment on the technical side of the alternative design as we lack the expertise. However, there are some discrepancies that may or may not be significant between what was proposed for southbound widening at Stage 2 and this latest plan. At DMRB Stage 2, the transition to northbound widening would have commenced at chainage 3890, while in the latest scheme the transition would start at approximately chainage 3700. We note that DMRB 3 design was regarded as the optimum in engineering terms, but was then refined. Presumably similar refinements could be found for this latest plan. Alignment. I will demonstrate the existence of the battlefield on the A9 was not given sufficient weight at the start of the planning process. Other criteria should have been subsidiary in determining route options. While designers knew that the existing road already compromises the battlefield, there was superficial consideration given to historic environment policy. It demands avoidance of impact in the first instance. Where that is not possible, it has to be demonstrated that efforts are made to minimise impact. The planning process, the assessments and the decisions taken at Stage 2 when the alignment was chosen were flawed. The belated arrival of the alternative design, which purports to show a fully developed southbound option, demonstrates that the evaluation was incomplete at DMRB Stage 2. The refined scheme. All refinements, changes and amendments made to the DMRB 3 scheme to create the refined scheme were done in order to address the shortcomings that were identified by HES and others on the level of impact on the inventory battlefield. I will demonstrate the refined scheme compromises the earlier assessments of competing interests. Consideration of landscape, the aesthetic and noise in DMRB 3 have been undermined by the withdrawal of embedded mitigation and the removal of the replacement bund. TS says that the residual impacts are no greater than that in the environmental statement, and that as a result the impacts of the refined scheme need not be subject to further review. We question how comforting this is in view of the fact that many residual impacts are given as moderate substantial. Laybys. I will demonstrate that the adoption of the lay-by strategy on the battlefield during Stage 1 compromised the integrity of the process. The unique requirements of an inventory battlefield were not understood. Laybys should have been vetoed on the battlefield at the outset. Subsequently, the decision to locate laybys on the battlefield rather than on neighbouring areas was attributed to the need for road safety. That requirement existed at the start of the process for all areas of the A9 project. The principle of providing high-quality view from the road determined the locations. The Killiecrankie section is recognised as one with relatively low traffic density, even by the modest standards of the A9 generally, and greater flexibility could have been given. This is particularly true of the southbound side, where there are two laybys on the existing dual section between Killiecrankie and Pitlochry. The first is less than 2 kilometres from the proposed southbound layby on the battlefield. While the local community were told after DMRB Stage 3 was well underway that road safety requirements meant that a northbound layby was to be located in the centre of the battlefield, it was not explained that, in fact, this was to plug a gap that would be caused by the proposed closure of the existing northbound layby, number 41, on the dual section of Pitlochry, about 4 kilometres away. Other options for a northbound layby in the section beyond the Assangol Bridge were not disclosed to the community, although we note that the omission of a northbound layby that had been considered at chainage 4420 at the other side of this angle bridge was thought not to be detrimental in terms of the traveller's experience, as the view would have been dominated by the sheer glass quarry. Laybys complicate engineering and have thwarted efforts to obtain the best road plan for the battlefield. We have never had an opportunity to see what plan could have been developed, northbound or southbound, had laybys been omitted. Skirmish fields. HES recommended that the Suds Basin in field F9 be relocated away from the battle's key landscape characteristics, or that Jacobs provide a more sensitive design of the pond. Consequently, the refined scheme relocates the Suds Basin to Skirmish Field, which is still within the boundaries of the inventory battlefield, and is therefore afforded equal protection. TS deems the enlarged Suds in Skirmish Field 2 a more sensitive design. TS has failed to understand the importance of the skirmish fields as part of Killiecrankie's cultural heritage. The fields are thought to have been an escape route for some government troops, fleeing from the route pursued by victorious Highlanders. No munitions were recovered from either skirmish field from 2008 metal detecting. A horseshoe fragment recovered from Skirmish Field 1 is the only possible battle-related find. Our own metal detecting around Old Fascally building, asset number 334 in 2019, found a munition. There is more to nationally important battlefields than physical remains or archaeological potential. It is essential to understand all aspects of historical association and battlefield landscape. That includes documentary evidence that enhances our understanding of the event, routes of movement, and historic settlements. I will demonstrate how TS failed to identify the importance of the skirmish fields. Our own research in local archives shows the strategic importance of the lands belonging to Robertson of Fascally, a significant power within the clan Robertson at the time of the battle. The land now known as Skirmish Fields contained a settlement and belonged to Alexander Robertson, 7th of Fascally, who met with retribution following the defeat at Dunkeld and the re-establishment of government authority in the area. Besides the battle-related cultural heritage that the refined scheme puts at risk, the skirmish field areas and the zone around present-day Old Fascally House is rich in archaeological remains and historic buildings going back to the prehistoric period. I will demonstrate how TS has failed to minimise impact in that area. We had little confidence in the noise modelling because the figures which were meant to demonstrate a good correlation between modelled predicted noise level and measured noise levels failed to do so. TS claims in response to objections that a good correlation would be difference of less than 3 decibels between measured noise levels at 11 locations and the modelled predicted noise level at the same locations. The environmental statement had previously stated that a good correlation would be less than 2 decibels. However, it was acknowledged in TS's hearing statement that for Dramian House 3.34c, that the environmental statement figure is 2 decibels is a typographic error. Nevertheless, the more generous level of difference which TS now claims has been used fails to demonstrate the model's reliability. There are still 4 of the 11 receptor points where the difference exceeds 3 decibels. It is unconvincing. The objective report admits that noise modelling shows that the removal of the bund and steepening of the earthworks would increase the significance of the residual noise impacts compared to those reported in the environmental statement. The inclusion of 2 natural stone walls is considered necessary for the significance of residual noise impacts to remain at levels presented in the environmental statement. Given the replies to specific questions in TS 161.453, it is still not possible to quantify how much noise difference there will be caused by the loss of the bund, or to what extent, if any, a reflective surface may improve the situation. The existing bund is a single continuous barrier. The replacement was to be in 2 sections, So there would have been an increase in noise for the community in any case, even with the DMRB3 scheme. A comparison of the refined scheme with the current situation would be more helpful, but has not been forthcoming.
Thank you, Mr. Bax. Could you please go to 5.1 in the first instance? You say there, I will demonstrate that the existence of the battlefield on the A9 was not given sufficient weight at the heart of the planning process. Do you wish to expand on that statement?
Yes, I just believe that at the very earliest stages, the battlefield should have had a higher weighting in the consideration. I think we heard evidence from a number of the promoters that, well, the battlefield was a factor. It was one of a number of factors, and in my opinion, it could have been given a higher weighting.
Is your microphone on?
Sorry. In 6.1, you're talking about the refined scheme, and you say that the refined scheme is a product of notification of the shortcomings that were identified by HES. I will demonstrate, you say, that the refined scheme compromises the earlier assessments of competing interests. What did you have in mind there?
Well, I was unclear then about in particular, the withdrawal of mitigation which was supposedly embedded in the earlier part of the scheme, the higher prominence that would have been given due to the sharper earthworks and the increased, what we felt might be an increased sense of severance of the battlefield as a result of the infrastructure associated with the refined scheme.
You say it compromises the earlier assessments. Does that reflect, or do I understand correctly that that reflects your disappointment that some of the initial embedded mitigation was removed?
Yes, that's correct.
Time on laybys, but thinking about them here at 7.1, you're critical of the lay-by strategy. Now, you've heard Mr. Robertson and other witnesses talk about the distances that are required, or at least the approximate distances that are required for the interspersing of lay-bys along the trunk road. How did the lay-by strategy compromise the integrity of the process?
Well, I have heard the evidence given. Our understanding had been that the lay-by strategy was adopted early in the process, and while that has been confirmed, it was subsequently, the evidence was, I think, given by Mr. Robertson, that early lay-by strategy had not formed part of the decision-making process later on. I can accept that, but I still feel that the positioning of lay-bys on the battlefield is of particular insensitivity given the inevitable requirement for additional infrastructure. So I would have thought there could have been afforded some flexibility in the as a result in order to remove the requirement for lay-bys.
It may be put to you by Mr. Milne that, to put it crudely and shortly, and I'm sure he'll put it much more elegantly, but we have no choice. The battlefield is the only place we can put the lay-by. This is, of course, on the new northbound carriageway.
Yes, I understand that will be the response.
What is your response to that?
Well, again, I can understand it is part of the DMRB process. and it is a recommendation. It is, though, a recommendation, and as such, I think there would be scope for not applying it in this instance. Also, I suppose it comes to questioning the requirement for this level of engineering on a relatively small stretch of the road overall, and whether that in itself would compromise road safety.
Very well, thank you. I have no more questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Milne.
Thank you very, very much, sir. Afternoon, Mr. Bax. Mr. Bax, I just wanted to check it in light of the extensive correspondence which has taken place over a number of years with parties who form the combined group of objectors, including yourself, and given the evidence presented to this inquiry, are there any aspects of your objection which you wish to withdraw?
In the overall sense, I don't think so, but if you could point me to specific areas, I might be able to help.
So, a general question in relation to each heading in your recognition.
Well, as far as alternative design is concerned, I think the comment that I had would still stand. Again, with alignment. Nothing particularly to change that.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to criticise the question, but it's a little bit diffuse, this question. It would perhaps be more helpful, and we could move on if you could identify what you think might usefully be withdrawn. Not that I wish to put words in my learned friend's mouth, but clearly the witness is finding this a confusing question, and it might be easier for him if you could do that.
I think it's a straightforward question with respect to each heading. Is there anything that has been said which changes the position? But if there's no answer to that, then that's fine.
From my perspective, I don't think Mr. Bax is confused, but if you want to take your time to just check through your recognition heading by heading, don't feel rushed. You know, I'm happy for you to take the time that you need to do that.
Thank you.
The promoter is certainly happy for Mr. Bax to confer with Ms. McLaughlin, if that would be helpful. It is just that straightforward question of if anything has been forthcoming.
I'm happy to acknowledge a considerable amount of information has been given, which we were not in receipt of earlier, but the broad thrust of my objection is maintained.
Thank you, Mr. Bax. I'm grateful for that. I have no further questions.
I had one question, just Mr. Bax, and it's I think just a matter of clarification only at paragraph 6.2. At the end of that paragraph, you question how comforting the conclusions in relation to the refined scheme are, given that there are so many residual impacts at the moderate substantial level. do I take that as a general comment, not that you're questioning the degree of severity there, just that there are so many at that level?
Yes, yes.
Perfect, thanks. Mr. Campbell.
No, thank you. I have no question, no re-examination questions.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks. I'm assuming that Mr. Millen still remains unavailable, so we definitely take his recognition as a written submission. Yes. In that case, we're ready to move on to Ms. Cannon. Would you prefer to do that before or after lunch, Mr. Campbell? I'm open either way.
May I have a minute for coffee?
You can.
Paragraphs 17 to 20, inclusive of this recognition, deal with matters which are, strictly speaking, outside the scope of this inquiry session. However, the witness is here, and I wonder if it would suit you and my learned friend if she simply read the statement right through, or whether you would have a separate set of questions in relation to those paragraphs, in which case Ms. Cannon will have to come back.
From my perspective, I'd be happy to take it all in this session, and any questions that I have related to the commercial impacts I could ask now. It sort of depends, though, on whether Transport Scotland are ready to do that.
So this means we wouldn't have the hearing session?
Correct.
Is that, well, I think given that there are a number of Transport Scotland and Jacobs participants who may wish to contribute to the hearing session, it's not going to be me. I wonder if we could skip over the paragraphs Mr. Campbell has just identified for the purposes of this inquiry session, but then move seamlessly into the hearing session to have that wider discussion, to take advantage of Ms. Cannon being here.
Yeah, perhaps see how we go on the other impacts, and perhaps a lunch break, and then straight into the hearing session on commercial impacts.
Very well, thank you, sir. That's helpful, and thank you, my friend, Mr. Mill. Ms. Cannon, good afternoon. If you have your recognition in front of you and the microphone is on, could you just read it, please?
Good
Keep the voice up, if you would.
Okay. I am Claire Cannon, partner of Daniel Price, who, with his mother, Mrs. Bridget Price, and the Three Counties Hotel Hereford Limited, are partners in the limited partnership of House of Urd LLP. The LLP owns Urd Estate, described below. Together, we have participated in the A9 road dualling programme since it was first conceived, making written contributions at the DMRB 1 and DMRB 2 stages, and also making further comments on the refined design. We have attended public consultations and had the benefit of private meetings with the Transport Scotland Jacobs team. We have lodged a formal objection, an outline statement of case, and a full statement of case in opposition to the proposal as it actually affects us and the interests of the LLP. For the sake of brevity, the contents of those statements are all held as repeated here and are adopted for the purpose of this public examination. Evidence concerning the setting of Urd House has been dealt with at the inquiry session 1. The LLP's direct interest in hearing session 3 is confined to the impact on the estate and its various interests. The property. Urd House is an 8-bedroom B-listed Scots Jacobean country house dating from 1831, which, with its walled garden, sits within the Urd estate. There are a further 7 houses and cottages. The properties lie in 2 compact forms to the south of the existing A9. The estate provides opportunity for a full range of field sports managed commercially. The salmon fishings extend to about half a mile of single left bank fishing on the River Garry and will not be affected by the proposal. The farming across the estate extends to 189 acres of permanent pasture, 62.29 acres of enclosed woodland, and 133 acres of open woodland. The entire estate extends the entire estate land extends to 2,586 acres overall. The walled garden is part of the listing at Urrod, also category B. Sloping southwards, it lies generally to the north of the house, and by repute contains the location where Graham of Claverhouse was wounded at the Battle of Dundee. The walled garden is also reputed to contain a mass grave. A stone wall in sound condition with coping stones in place at about 8 to 9 foot in height surrounds it on 3 sides, while the southernmost boundary allows a view of the entire interior of the wall garden from the house and its curtilage, over a wall about 4 foot in height to the top, uphill and beyond to the north. The house and walled garden are shielded from the existing road by a substantial tree belt. It is proposed that the refined design will bring the new northbound carriageway nearer to the house. Extensive tree felling is described in the TS programme. The property is listed at category B, and the entire inscription is set out in full in the statement of case. We have been advised that while the law does not prohibit development in the vicinity of a listed building or its setting, it does set a high hurdle and requires special regard to be paid to the desirability of preserving the building and its setting and features of architectural or historical interest. Amenity. As a matter of fact, the proposals bring the trunk road some significant distance closer to all the houses at Urrod. It is inevitable, therefore, that over the construction period, the noise and dust associated with large-scale excavation and road building, tree felling and the rebuilding of the northbound carriageway will be a dominant feature in the lives of all those who live there. The proposal site is slightly uphill from all the houses, and we do not therefore think that dominance is an exaggerated prospect. Dominance is likely to take the form of both visual dominance, with many of the trees gone. It will be impossible to escape sight of the excavation from any of the houses, and oral dominance simply because both construction and ordinary traffic running are inherently very noisy. Noise. There is no need to instance the types of noise. At present, Urrod is not a particularly quiet place because the hum of background traffic is usually present, but it is in no sense disturbing to amenity. The pervasive staccato and many varied percussive and other sounds of road construction machinery, particularly earth movers, engines and reversing klaxons, over 2 years or more is likely to present a real challenge to occupants to gain much enjoyment to the occupation of their property. Outside living in better weather is likely to be a real challenge, since pervasive noise will make it unattractive at best. In the interests of brevity, I do not think I need to list further the types of noise and dust problems which will inevitably arise as a necessary and inevitable part of such significant excavation. We do not accept that the proposed mitigation outlined in the ES and subsequent papers provides sufficient assurance against excessive noise at Urrod House and within the grounds. Self-evidently, if the new carriageway was to be built to the north of the existing A9, that added distance would better attenuate the noise, since it would both be further away and leave the existing bund in place. Noise attenuation may be assisted by the provision of a sound barrier in the form of a wall if sufficient height. It should be carefully noted that the LLP owns land to the north of the existing A9 and that we have offered it at no cost to the public purse to Transport Scotland. The offer has not been taken up. Visual amenity. The proximity of the works to the houses is obvious and needs no further explanation here. The construction site along the length of the existing A9 is well within ordinary views and within hearing distance of all the houses. If it was to the north side, it would not be. The refined design envisages extensive tree removal outside the walled garden. The trees within the walled garden are near or at the end of their useful lives. They can remain in place for the construction period, but it is inevitable that within 5 years they will require to be thinned at the very least. The RD envisages new tree planting generally along the southern edge of the new carriageway, but it is equally inevitable that any protection which is afforded by new planting will take 25 to 40 years to be effective as screening of any part of the Urrod property from the operational road. This is not to decry the need for planting, nor the promoter's willingness to undertake it. It is both necessary and desirable to have as much new planting as possible as soon as it can be carried out, but it will not provide visual or oral protection. Protection of the house and listed walled garden. The existing lay-by to the north of Urrod House is to be closed. That is to be welcomed, for the reasons already given in earlier statements. Removal of that lay-by from the new northbound carriageway will remove a source of litter, etc., and intrusion. The chain-link fence to the immediate south of the lay-by has ameliorated the problem to an extent. A larger lay-by further south on the new carriageway is proposed. We have strong reservations about that lay-by. We have proposed the erection of a new dry stone wall. To an extent, the promoters appear to agree. The intention at present, from the refined design, is that the existing bund would be replaced by a natural stone wall, in keeping with other similar walls in the area. The wall is proposed to be 1.6 metres high at the north side of the walled garden, equivalent in overall height to the existing bund. The wall is proposed to run from approximate chainage 2,130 to approximate chainage 2,370. That's 240 metres in length. Our statement of case envisages increases in both height and length to the dry stone wall. The wall proposed is not in fact a dry stone wall, but has a blockwork core and is built with stones and cement. It would act as both a partial noise attenuation barrier and, to an extent, a successful visual barrier to the operating road. As objectors, we propose that the distance of any new wall should run from chainage 2,100 to chainage 2,600 or thereby, thus providing some protection for all the houses, and that its height should be raised to 1.9 metres. We know that is a substantial wall, but in the absence of anything else effective to counter the massively damaging effect to our amenity and the setting of the houses themselves, we think that in reality it is a small price to pay. The walled garden. The walled garden itself will not in theory be physically impacted upon by the construction works, nor by the operational phase, provided that a sufficient margin or buffer is maintained between the limit of works and the northmost face of the wall. At the northeast corner, the margins are very tight, and we remain politely sceptical that it can be maintained. Transport Scotland has given assurances that those margins can be maintained during construction. As objectors, we have no way of knowing whether or not that is correct, but it is tolerably clear that the space will become unusable for any private or recreational use, at least for the duration of the construction phase.
Just pause there now. Would you have me just ask the witness to read these paragraphs now so that we can, or would you like to see them later on?
I'm relaxed about that. Just would be as well to have them read now, I think.
Or very happy to have them taken as read, sir. It's for
yeah. Well, let's just have them read.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Will you just go on, please?
Okay.
The spelling mistake in the title of 17 is mine. Sorry. Lettings.
Okay, Urrod House lettings.
Yeah.
The house is let to visitors when not occupied by us. It sleeps 18 and has staff accommodation. It can be expected that it may be let for as many as 40 weeks per year. It is reasonably anticipated that the proximity of the construction works will deter tenants, as there are many more attractive locations remote from road construction works, which will be available to let, whether for holidays or game shooting parties. This activity is at the core of Urrod's commercial stability. Commercial pheasant shooting and large-scale house letting at Urrod, which underpins the financial stability and viability of the estate, without the 3 affected drives and in the vicinity of long-lasting construction works, will be placed at high risk by the proposal and the construction works. To be blunt, we are of the view that we are more likely than not to experience a fall away of letting potential. We have marketed the estate over the last 18 months, both for letting and for sale, but the works proposed to the A9 have entirely killed off any sale potential. We still have letting tenants so long as there are no works actually being carried out. Time alone will tell whether losses will occur. Commercial game shooting. Most commercial or private pheasant and partridge shooting takes place on the north side of the A9 and could be affected by the works. However, shooting at or near the house and on the battlefield and on the field to the south of the house, which is the bottom field, will either be impossible on account of the works or will be more likely to cause disturbance and dispersal of pheasants laid down for commercial shooting. Pheasant shooting is charged to the guests by the bird, and so X birds a day multiplied by the rate is the cost of shooting, over and above the cost of the accommodation if the house is let, and staff and subsistence costs. There are about 20 drives on the estate. 3 are likely to be affected by the construction and operational phases. In conclusion...
And just for completeness, by drives in paragraph 20, do you mean shooting drives, not...
Yes,
not
absolutely,
not
they are
routes?
shooting drives.
Thank you.
Right, in conclusion, it is profoundly unsettling and unsatisfactory to have our domestic and business environment deliberately brought so close to long-term construction works, which will affect every aspect of our lives so significantly. Our realistic amenity and other commercial concerns have not really been addressed despite the assurances given. While recognising the political imperative for dualling the A9 along its entire length, we are of the opinion that not nearly enough effort has been put into mitigating the effects upon us. However the compensation arrangements eventually turn out, they will not make up for the loss of use and loss of value of this precious asset. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cannon. Much obliged. I don't have any supplementary questions for the moment.
Any questions of cross-examination, Mr. Mill?
Just one. Good afternoon, Ms. Cannon. The one question that I have is relates to the draft undertaking, which was prepared by Transport Scotland and sent to Mr. Campbell on your behalf on 22nd August 2019, which is document TS 078.40. I don't need to take you to it unless you wish to, but my understanding is that there has been no response to that offer, and I wondered why that was the case.
I don't think we felt that we were being offered enough to withdraw our projection.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
No questions from me either. I do have a point I'd like to have addressed. It's going to have to be in closing submissions now, though, and that is, does that draft unilateral offer still stand? I.e., can I take that in my conclusions to be part of the scheme before me, or what status it has, in other words?
I could answer. Well, I can refer you. Dr. Blewett, in her recognition, sets out the promoter's position. I remember Dr. Blewett referred to that briefly in her evidence, and we can certainly direct your attention, sir, to the specific part of the recognition in our closing submission.
Perfect, thanks. Anything in re-examination, Mr. Campbell?
No, thank you, and I can do likewise in relation to the undertaking.
Perfect.
Beg your pardon, the draft undertaking.
Yes. Okay. Thanks for that, Ms. Cannon.
Thank
So
you.
let's break for lunch for an hour now. So back at 1:35, when we'll have the hearing session on House of Orard commercial. Just thinking about what else we can or should do this afternoon. The tourism hearing session must be Monday next week at the earliest. Are there any other of the 4 individual hearing sessions that we could take today and or tomorrow? That was Drummond House, Old Fascally, House of Blair and Killiecrankie House? No.
I think it would be possible to have some, but I know definitely Killiecrankie House Hotel can't be here tomorrow. But I could check up over lunch and see if who's available for tomorrow.
Okay, perhaps when we come back after lunch, we could quickly take a view on which hearing sessions we're likely to be able to have this afternoon and tomorrow.
This afternoon, I don't think anybody's available.
Okay, including yourself. So do you need some time to prepare?
Did we do it? Oh, apart from us. Yes.
Okay, so for this afternoon we'll have House of Orard and potentially yourselves.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sir, if I may intervene, the promoters' take on this is that the natural running order is to have the tourism session first. Our concern is that if the site-specific sessions were to take place before the tourism session, we would things would get a bit confused and evidence would end up being repeated. Basically, we think that the input of Professor Lennon is a good way of setting context for the hearing sessions to follow.
Can you speak?
Yeah, we would probably agree with that, to be honest.
I do not wish to upset that natural running order then. So, this afternoon we will have House of Orard, and that will be us for the week. And we return on Monday for the tourism hearing session and then the 4 individual sessions.
Yes, and I think you know this, but the House of Orard is not taking part in any of the other hearing sessions. So with respect, may I be excused after that?
You may.
Yeah.
And lest I forget, when talking about procedural matters later, if it would be possible to have a 10 a.m. start on Monday, that would be very helpful.
Yes, happy with all of that. Okay, let's break until 1:40 when we'll have the next hearing session.